Hi, we are Project Play, Proactive Lifestyles for Active Youth. We are Group 11A. I'm Sal, and this is Kelsey, Brooke, and Janaye. So, stated here are sample details. The target population is children in East County, San Diego. The sampling frame is 2 chosen elementary schools in East County, San Diego. The experimental school is where the intervention will take place. A different school will be our comparison school. Our actual sample will be 5th grade students whose parents allow them to partake in our study. The goal of Project Play is to promote an active lifestyle through knowledge and activities in order to reduce obesity. Obesity is a global epidemic that is caused by poor diet choices and limited physical activity. Over a period of less than 25 years, the percentage of 6 to 11-year-olds within the United States have increased from 11.3% to 17.9%. For this reason, it is vital to establish positive behaviors backed by information and knowledge in children to develop successful health habits. Project Play has 5 objectives. Number 1, learning objective, to increase children's knowledge of healthy choices by 25% by comparing a progressive survey from the beginning and end of the school year. Number 2, behavior objective, to increase awareness by 10% of the consequences of poor dietary habits and teach them to make better choices. Number 3, process objective, to assess that the 3 10-minute exercise routines in class for all students of each grade level were achieved. Number 4, outcome objective, to decrease the average BMI among all elementary students in East County, San Diego by 5% in 1 year. And 5, outcome objective, to reduce the incidence of type 2 diabetes by 10% among our cohort versus our comparison group. The conceptual model that we will be using to guide our intervention is as follows. We believe that a change in knowledge about nutrition will lead to a change in dietary choices, and that a change in knowledge about exercise will then lead to a change in exercise behaviors. Both of these changes together will lead to a change in BMI measurements, which will in turn lead to a change in the incidence of type 2 diabetes in our population. In order to determine if our hypotheses about this model are correct, we will be taking various different measures throughout the course of our study. The first and most critical measurement that we will be taking is body mass index readings for each of the individuals involved in our program. We will take them for those in the experimental as well as the comparison group at the beginning of the intervention, at the end of the intervention, and then again 7 years later upon the subject's completion of high school to determine whether our program is successful in both the short and long term. The final measurement that we will be taking is only during the final observation for our intervention. We will be taking a glycated hemoglobin A1C test of all participants at the end of high school. This test is an indicator for diabetes type 2, and it will allow us to see if there is any significant difference between our experimental and comparison group. For our research design, we will be using a quasi-experimental pre-test, post-test setup. This involves 2 non-randomized subpopulations. Both will be observed at the beginning of our intervention, and then the experimental group will receive our intervention, whereas the comparison group will not. Post-intervention, 2 observations will take place again of both groups, one immediately upon completion, and then again 7 years later, after high school. Below is a brief timeline of what the intervention will look like. The first advantage is for our quasi-experimental design, it allows us to reduce contamination since the subjects won't be at the same school. Our second advantage, for the pre-test, post-test, it'll help us track subjects longitudinally. And our third advantage, school-based design makes recruitment much easier and more reliable. For our disadvantages, number 1, it's not randomized. Number 2, the maturation of students will affect their choices and may result in threats to the external validity. This is a particular concern during our last observation, since we won't have seen our subject for 7 very formative years. And third, risk of subject mortality due to such a long-term study.